If you've been working hard and you're doing all of the things, yet you still don't feel rich and you don't really have a buffer in your bank account, listen closely. Because most people are not stuck financially because they're not smart enough. They are stuck because they are still believing subconsciously a bunch of lies about money. And these lies, well, you might not even be aware of them. And if you are aware of them, they sound like they make a lot of sense and they make you responsible. They make you feel humble and you feel like you should be humble. And they might even sound good because they were taught to you at a really early age. But in truth, these lies are keeping you in a situation of under-earning. And, when I'm talking about becoming rich, or I use the words rich and poor, and they're quite taboo words, especially where I'm from in Belgium. When I say rich, I'm not talking about private jets. I'm not talking about Chanel handbags. I mean, if those are things you're into, you do you. But what I'm talking about is consistent money, a stable income, freedom in time, and especially peace of mind. Because they say money doesn't make you rich, and that might be true. But a lack of money and financial stress can definitely stress you the fuck out and, really make you sad and stressed out. Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, the show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday. So the first lie that we kind of get taught at an early age is more hours equals more money. And this is the type of, hustle programming that entrepreneurs never question. Because in the beginning, your first challenge as an entrepreneur, especially as a service provider, is to get people to see you as, adding value. So you start trading time for money. And I feel like that's often the first obstacle we encounter as entrepreneurs or as service providers, because you have to prove yourself. You have to find clients. So you are so excited when that first person pays you. I remember for me, for example, in the beginning, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get clients. So first I'm going to work for free. So I coach people for free. And then when I had enough proof that I was good at what I did, then, people paid me 30 euros an hour. And then it was 40 euros an hour. And at a certain point, my calendar was fully booked. Yet I was barely surviving because my prices were way too low and I did not have any scalability in my income model. So, in the beginning, you keep adding hours, you keep doing more, you keep grinding. And for me, at a certain point, that led to me waking up on a Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. thinking, holy shit, this is going to be such a long day. And I would be exhausted by the end of the day. Then I would start overeating because eating was the only moment to relax I had. And by the end of the week, I was just like not myself. I was fully exhausted, and the only way I could relax was by literally, I remember just being in a situation where I was like, I'll just go and get myself some snacks. I could barely talk anymore. I didn't feel like going out with friends and family anymore. I was really exhausted, and I'd made, money. And then the week after was even worse, because then all of a sudden all of my clients were on vacation or they got sick, and all of a sudden I wasn't trading my time for money and I wouldn't be working hard, but I also didn't have any income. And what I realized then is, wow, I've really hit a ceiling with my business, because yes, I am in demand, but my prices aren't right and I don't have any scalability. And the moment I realized something had to change was I was driving in my car. I was listening to this podcast or this audiobook. I don't even remember. It was such a long time ago. And I had started noticing that I had this thing in my brain that was telling me, like, you got to be strong and you got to be smart and you got to be independent and you got to figure it out all by yourself, because that's really what we get taught in Belgium at school, that you have to be very self-sufficient and all of that. And I noticed that had got me to where I had gotten, but it wasn't going to get me any further. And I started seeing that multimillionaires and billionaires in the world, they didn't have more than 24 hours in a day. And I had 24 hours in a day, but I was barely sleeping and my income was capped. And I just realized, like, I am not going to be able to continue like this. And on top of all of that, not only am I exhausted and under earning, but I even had a wait list of people wanting to work with me. And so what I realized is that you can have two entrepreneurs working the same 40 hours. One sells random services, custom work, no process, way too low pricing, no clear offer. And you can have another entrepreneur who actually has one clear transformation that they're selling, packaged, proper pricing with a repeatable system. And both entrepreneurs might be working the same hours, but the second one is going to be able to scale, is going to be able to actually be happy, build systems, start adding value to clients separate from their own time because they have started, building structure into their business. So it's not about how much harder can I work, how much harder can I do my best, how much harder can I try. The question we need to ask ourselves when we want to get out of that trading time for money income loop is, what creates the biggest result both for me and my clients? And how do I do more of that efficiently? So if you're currently feeling a bit stuck with your income, I want you to go and sit down and really write down what is the number one thing that creates the biggest result for your clients. And I'll give you an example of what I did back in the days. I was giving fitness coaching to clients, but almost all of my clients were also struggling with their food, and they were struggling with their meal prep, and they were struggling with, their macros and their habits. And I realized wow, all of them need the same habits. So on top of my personal training business, I started building out a scalable part of my business, which was my first thing was a month-long thing, and people paid 165 euros for it. And it was 30 days of videos, and it was kind of like a rewiring of the way that you approached food and all of the things and habits and all of it. And in the beginning, it was a lot of work because I had to record a video for every day, and then I had to manually send that out because this is before I knew how email sequences worked and how automations worked. But, the first time you're recording the videos, it's a lot of work. But the 10th time that someone pays you that amount, you can just automate it and send it to them. And they're actually paying you 165 euros for something that costs you nothing in delivery or barely anything. And I noticed that when I started doing that, not only was I making more money, but I was also making a bigger impact because my clients weren't getting the most out of their personal training if they weren't eating adequately and they didn't have the right habits. So it was a win-win for everyone, including my bank account. And then, so the one thing you're going to identify first is, what is the one thing you do or you don't do that could create the biggest result for your clients? And then you're going to create a win-win. And then the second thing I want you to ask yourself is, what is the one thing that you're doing that makes you busy, but that actually does not move revenue? And what you're going to do now is you're going to start doing the first thing first, and you're going to delete or delegate or postpone the second. So that means for me, it meant sometimes at 6 a.m. I would be recording those videos because I was so determined to get out of that income loop because I had it. Because I'd started realizing rich people, rich women, they don't win by doing more or sleeping less. They actually sleep a lot more. They win by, really prioritizing what actually matters and what actually will build the growth in your business, not just maintenance. So the first lie that we got to break through for you is more hours equals more money. And that doesn't mean that you won't go through times in your business where you're starting up or you're scaling and you're putting in a lot of hours. I still encounter those phases where I'm putting a bit more hours into things than I want, but I also know when I'm doing something new. I recently created a new program. That's a moment where I got to put in some more. But then the second time I do that program, or when I'm selling that program evergreen and it's just a do-it-yourself, there is no hours to money tie anymore, except for maybe the selling part, right? So we really have to get out of that loop. And the way I look at it for entrepreneurs is there's two phases. The first phase is you learn to sell your time. You learn to add value through your time. Once you've done that and the demand outperforms the offer you have, that's when we're going to actually start scaling up separate from your time. So more hours equals more money might just be the lie that is keeping you in a playing small situation. Now, the second lie is, honestly, this one is a bit more subconscious, a bit older. And this one heavily depends on the way you were raised. The second lie is humble is good, rich is bad. And if you're a woman, especially if you were raised to be nice and modest and grateful, this one is kind of sneaky because it kind of sounds like integrity. It sounds like, oh, you gotta be humble, you gotta stay humble, you gotta be nice and accommodating. It's literally what was taught to you at an early age, maybe not by your parents if they were really progressive, but maybe at school or at play dates or whatever, or in books. But this is often conditioning that keeps you small because it keeps us in an either or mindset. You'll start believing things like, if I want more, I'm selfish. If I charge more, they'll think I'm greedy. If I become rich, my friends will start judging me. And one of the most sneaky ones is if I'm too successful, I'll be unlikable. So what happens when you subconsciously believe these things? You undercharge. You over-deliver out of a fear that otherwise people won't like you. You avoid selling because you don't want to be too salesy, because people hate that. And you hesitate to be more visible. So you're not showing up. And the worst of all is you keep your goals small and reasonable and, appropriate for your friend group so you can feel safe. The truth is, however, being broke is not noble or good for the world. Underselling yourself and working yourself into exhaustion at a rate that is too low is not being of service. Playing small doesn't make you a better person than someone who plays bigger. It just makes your life a lot harder. So I look at it as being like an either or mindset. It's like either I'm a good person or I make a lot of money. A lot of people have that, and it's because maybe their parents had a boss that made a lot of money and they would talk shit about them. So maybe when you were little, your dad came home and you're like, oh, the boss said this and he has he can do that because, he's out on his big boat or something. Or maybe your grandpa said weird things. Like, for example, my grandpa used to always say, and this is a literal translation from Flemish, so it doesn't work well, but he would say things like, a rich man is weird, basically. So for the longest time in my family, towards, a lot of my family members, I felt so weird when I started making more money. And then I felt guilty about making more money. And then I started paying for things or not asking for money back when I had paid for something that actually we were supposed to split, is because I felt guilt. But then I started realizing what I was doing. And I was like, making more money is not something I should feel guilty about. It's not something I should make smaller. And there's this weird unwritten rule in society that people think when you don't make a lot of money, you're a good person. But when you make a lot of money, you're a bad person, which is really weird because actually the way you should look at it is when you're making a lot of money, you're also in a position to do a lot more good. For example, for me, people can talk shit about me all they want, but I not only make money for myself, I was able to invest in my brother's startup and help him out. I've been able to give money and time and resources to charities. I can help people when they're in a time of need. I can tip people well, stuff like that. So actually making money has actually helped me do more good in the world. Money doesn't make you bad. Money will only make you more of what you already are and probably less stressed out because of things like unexpected bills or a car breaking down. So maybe you've recognized yourself in some of this, probably not all of it. Maybe there was one thing where you're like, oh my God, I think I have that. So what I want you to do is look at a sentence like the following one. I'm allowed to be rich and I'm allowed to be a good person at the same time. And then ask yourself, what would I do differently this week if I believed that was true? So it's not an either or. I get this way too often. People come to me and they're like, yeah, I don't need to make a lot of money. I just want to. And then I'm like, wait, stop. Why did you start the sentence with that? I don't need to make a lot of money. I just want to. You could also say, I want to make a lot of money. Try that out for size. I'm going to shut up for a couple of seconds. Say out loud, I want to make a lot of money. I want to make a lot of money. How does that feel? Does that feel good or do you feel resistance? If you feel resistance about it, there's something there that you want to work on. And then I just want to help a lot of people. What if we changed the whole sentence to I want to make a lot of money and I want to help a lot of people? Doesn't that sound way better when it's an and not an either or? So I believe if we kind of skip these beliefs of more hours is more money, and we stop thinking it's an either or situation, you're not either a good person or you make a lot of money, but you get to be both. that you can step into your rich woman era. And it is a golden time for us if we just dare to step into it. So if any of what I said hit you, just pick one thing to work on this week. And I'm posting a lot on my Instagram about this. I'm actually writing a guide about like how to get rich. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, I will have published it. So the best thing you can do if you're interested in this, and if you want a full rundown, the guide is like 100 pages long. I don't know exactly when it will be coming out, but it will be about like how you can, create your richest year this year. Just do one thing. You just message me, get rich, all one word. And if I have it ready, I'll send it to you. You don't want to miss out on this. It has such golden nuggets of information. I'm trying to create it both in English as well as in Dutch. So just message me, get rich, all one word, or go to the link in the description of this episode, and I will make sure I'll get it over to you. You do not want to miss out. And then there's one more thing that I want to say, and I talked about it in last week's episode, but I think often, and this is a personal thing, but when we care so much about what other people think and we have so much unconscious programming, that tends to also hold us back from showing up. So earlier today, I think I gave an example of like not showing up. And maybe that's why you're here. You're like, Amy, I do all of these things, yet I'm not making bank yet. Why am I not, more financially liquid? And I think often we don't just have fear of failure, but we might also have fear of success. And that might be something that is holding you back, because I've often held myself back because I felt like I shouldn't outshine other people. So today we talked about, the money beliefs, but what other same type of beliefs are playing there? I personally always have this with like stepping into my power, being really visible, being perceived as too strong, too powerful, too successful. And so when I let that hold me back, I show up less. I don't stick to the things I said I was going to do. It's because we're sometimes not afraid of, what I want to say is often we are actually afraid of showing up our fullest self, of actually going after what we want. So today I just wanted to give you permission that if you are currently struggling to go after what you want, why is that? Is it because there's an identity gap? Is it because you're afraid of what people from high school will think? Is it because you're afraid of outgrowing your friend group? I just want to give you this invitation today. It's like, no, I have no call to action. It's like, sit down and you know how to create content. That's not the thing. You know what to do. That's not the thing. There's something subconscious holding you back from reaching your biggest potential. And I want to invite you the upcoming week to have a look at what that might be and to journal on it. Okay? Have a nice day. See you next week, Tuesday. And special question for you today is I'm knees deep into creating content. I have this wish list of guests. I'm like redoing a bunch of stuff for the podcast. And I'm really curious if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for episodes, if you have any suggestions, topics, whatever, just message me on Instagram on FastForwardAmy. I'd love to hear from you. And in return, I'll make that episode. Okay? Talk soon and see you later. They say running a business is getting harder and harder because you can be amazing at what you do, but if you don't know how to actually run the business side of things, you won't actually make it past year 5. Now, I've been in business for the past 10 years, and trust me, I have made a lot of mistakes. But luckily, I've learned a lot of things as well. And throughout the years, I've discovered that there are 9 skills every entrepreneur needs in order to actually grow their business in a sustainable way. And I can teach you how to do this and grow your business to 5K, 10K a month, all without a team or really fancy systems. When you apply these principles, you won't be feeling like you're in survival mode anymore at the beginning of each month, or like you're afraid to open up your mailbox, or that secret voice in your brain that goes, should I go back to working for a boss? It is going to disappear, because once you have these 9 principles, everything is going to get easier. And that is why, to celebrate my 10 years of entrepreneurship and my 33rd birthday, I am bringing back my best-selling program, the Business Freedom Elevator, which has been followed by over 1,900 entrepreneurs entrepreneurs, and I want to celebrate my birthday with you. So if you're interested to learn the 9 essential entrepreneurial skills every business owner needs in order to go from having a dream to actually having a full-time paycheck without losing your freedom, make sure you go and grab lifetime access to my program. And as a bonus, you're going to get 3 days of live coaching where we're going to fast track your success for this year. Go to the link in the description and I'd love to see you there. And if you have any questions, just send me a message on Instagram. I don't bite.